Welcome to I Said What I Said. I'm Brad 𝐬𝐻𝐾𝐿. That's Tyson Gentry. Hope everybody is doing well. I'm back in one piece, back in the saddle here in Phoenix, Arizona. Survived Mexico City. It was a great time. Tyson, we left the people at the dry, though. This has been 2 weeks in a row. We haven't been able to give out picks. I think some people may be happy. Some people may be sad about that fact. But, for the foreseeable future, I'll be in the chair.
Yeah, and they probably saved a bunch of money or, lost a bunch if they had to make their own bets instead of fading us. So we apologize. We're back, and we're here for the rest of the football season, into the basketball season, and any unforeseen circumstances. Everybody Brad knows is getting married right now, so just give him some grace, people.
Yeah, it's a tough time because my wallet is going to go down and the expenditures are going to go up. That is the sad reality of this age group, and Tyson's been doing weddings all summer too, so he knows as well. And anybody who's got the bad memories of it. No, it'll be fun though. I'm excited for it. Right after New Year's, so it should be a good time. But like Dustin said, we got a lot of football stuff to cover. We'll be back on our regular scheduled programming. Regular season college football is done, so we'll have our bowl palooza and things like that. If you guys are unfamiliar, we'll kind of cue you up on our college episode coming up. But Tyson, man. Week 14 reaction episode. We got a lot to discuss. We got some games to preview. But first, I got an interesting kind of angle that I want to take when it comes to my thoughts for the Just Say It this week.
Just say it.
And so I'm down in Mexico City, right? And it's a pain to find this college game. I went to Penn State, and we're trying to watch the Big Ten championship game. We got to jump all through these bells and whistles, VPNs, Fire Sticks, trying to download apps, yada, yada, yada. And then I'm walking around on Sunday trying to get a little sightseeing in. And Tyson, the business acumen in the NFL never fails to amaze me because on freaking every single thing I'm looking, there's some sort of TV that's got an NFL game on. We're driving to our location, and there's this massive broadcasting station, and it's advertising NFL. Like, well, this is the channel that has the NFL. And it just continues to make me think about how the NFL continues to expand and why it's just never going to be a dying market, I don't think, in the United States in our lifetime, because they not only destroy everything in the U.S. when it comes to the calendar of sports, but they're branching out to the rest of the world, right? Like London now is obsessed. Oh my God, we'll give Germany a little bit of this chocolate that they get addicted to. Oh, and they got to come to Munich every year. Oh, well, why don't we go to Mexico City? Oh, that'd be great. Now Mexico City sucked. There's still going to be soccer fans, right? Like they changed the channel when the local game was on of the soccer. But for a nice afternoon watch, nothing else is on. Let's throw the NFL on. And Tyson, it's just going to be a revenue builder, and it's going to keep growing and growing, and this machine is never going to stop. And seeing all that NFL stuff in Mexico, I was like, what is going on?
Multi-billion-dollar organization, and we're still missing face mask calls every week. There's not a chip in the football to tell you where it was. We can't even get a down-the-line shot of some of this stuff. But just to support your point a little bit, Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Eagles, sold 8% of his share today. He's still the majority owner, but that valuation came in over $8 billion, which is the highest in the history of professional sports. And if you think the Eagles are the most valuable franchise in the NFL, I have a bridge to sell you. Just say it this week. Brad, momentum matters, and not like for the Seattle Seahawks right now, who are building towards the playoffs, and not for the Los Angeles Rams, who are trying to build towards the playoffs. But I'm looking at the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Indianapolis Colts. And yes, the Bucs might end up making the playoffs, but the Panthers are playing with teams that 2 months ago we thought they had no business playing with. Bryce Young looks like the guy from Alabama. Dave Canales looks like maybe he's not in over his head. Darren Rizzi gets he gets promoted in New Orleans, and all of a sudden this team has to fight. They look like trash, but they won the game over the New York Giants 14-11. The Colts bench Anthony Richardson. They bring him back. Now they're on the very outside. Like the door is still kind of open, and they have something to play for. So this is like, as you look forward to next season, you look toward next season and you think, somebody's going worst to first. Who's it going to be? My gut tells me it always comes from one of these teams that close the season strong and have something to build off of. We're Eagles fans here. So in 2017, they go and win the Super Bowl after they close the season strong and make the playoffs. 2022, when they go to the Super Bowl, they close the season strong, eliminated the wild card. The next year they're there. This is how the Chiefs built. This is like in the history of the NFL. You can look at it. There is a definite linear projection where if you can kind of overcome some of these hurdles and close your season in a way that allows you to build on that momentum, you can be a force in the NFL. The Detroit Lions did it. I mean, look at them right now. So if you're going to look around the NFL and you're going to go, I don't really want to watch the Panthers game this weekend. Well, next year you's going to thank you when somebody says, who is that? And you get to look at them and say, that's Tommy Tremble. He's good.
That's a great point. Because, I mean, the recent one that everybody points to is the Bucs were struggling when Brady was there. Bye week, they didn't lose again. And now we're talking about Tom Brady, greatest quarterback of all time. I know people still hate him. So they're putting Mahomes up there right now. But, I mean, the most accomplished quarterback of all time, Brady, and he wouldn't have gotten that final Thanos, Infinity Stone. I'm not a Marvel guy. But, if he hadn't have done that, and it was the momentum to come out of the bye week. The Eagles right now going to the bye, and the momentum has continued to go. Tyson, we talked a little bit last week about who's going to win the NFC West. How do the Rams close every single year under McVay? It's always hot. Like, they always find the right buttons to push, and it seems like that's going to happen again. So we'll be looking ahead. Who's going to get hot? I like that from Tyson. That's something to keep in mind too. We get the summer off from the NFL, but this would be something maybe we'll write down, like who's staying hot as we go into next season. All right, Tyson, let's turn the page. We don't have a ton to talk about in armchair quarterback, but really what is taking over the NFL conversation right now is a beef that involves, our favorite team. So let's get into that now.
Armchair quarterback.
And Tyson's rolling his eyes.
That picture in a minute.
Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown are beefing, ? And so I'm going to just throw it to Tyson. He's got some strong thoughts. If you're watching on YouTube, you saw the big eye roll. It was very pronounced. If you're listening to podcasts, I'm sure you could feel the eye roll from Tyson.
Probably.
So what's your thoughts on this?
Well, we can step back from the NFL and just say that the Philadelphia media market might be the most toxic in sports to give New York a run for their money. New York gets to, take the crown right now with Soto hopping from the Yankees to the Mets. There's a lot of stuff over there. I had to get that in, that. But with this A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts thing, first of all, quote was taken a little bit out of context. Brandon Graham, Hall of Fame yapper, and he was yapping. And what he meant when he said they were best friends, things are different now, he meant things are different now that they're coworkers. And he came out later and clarified that. The other part, A.J. Brown is a world-class competitor. Jalen Hurts is a world-class competitor. The team has won 9 games in a row, and the passing offense doesn't look good. Those are things they want to get fixed. That was something that was supposed to stay in-house. Do you think Amon-Ra St. Brown isn't sitting in Detroit right now looking around going, I've only been over 80 yards 3 times this season? This is broken. This is something I want fixed. Sure, he's doing in the locker room. It doesn't get leaked, so we don't care about it. This is an absolute nothing burger, but this is a 2023 team that collapsed. And that was the story at the end of last season. It was, wow, look at how bad things have gotten under Nick Sirianni. And now the Sharks are circling. The Vultures are here because they want to do it one more time to this football team. I think this means absolutely nothing. Sure, things need to get fixed. A.J. Brown's open all the time. Jalen Hurts was eating the ball. He played one of his worst games since 2021. I don't care what EPA says. I don't care what the nerd stats are going to tell you. I watched the game, and he wasn't very good. A.J. has a right to be upset. They've won 9 games in a row. They have a new running back in the backfield that's trying to break a record. That's a long-standing record for rush yards in the NFL. There's 20 touches gone. Devontae Smith has to get something. A.J. Brown's got to get something. A lot of mouths to feed. And in all honesty, this was a boring-ass week in the NFL, and it was a boring week for storylines. So something had to happen, and the Philadelphia Eagles obliged.
Well, Tyson, I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I'll even take it a step further. I like this, and we were talking a little bit offline before we jumped on here. Just what do you think? We're Eagles fans, so before we get on here, just kind of what's your thoughts on this whole situation? And I told you, this to me is not concerning at all. I'd be more concerned if it was the other way, right? Like, what do they always say? The disease of me, or the disease of sitting on your ass and thinking that everything's kumbaya. If the Eagles were sitting around saying, we are the best team, this is perfect, everything's great, that's more concerning than the wide receiver, the star, saying, we need to get better and improve, or else we're not going to win. You take one or the other. In the history of sports, do you prefer the team that's more motivated or the team that's fat and happy? I'm going to take the team that's more motivated. And so, sure, it's sexy and it's, woo, we're going to make headlines in Philly media. We're going to talk about it because Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown are beefing. And, yeah, let's run with it. Or they're competitors, like Tyson said. These are really good friends, 2 best friends who have known each other a long time. Tyson likes to bring this up. I'll bring it up this time. Jalen Hurts is the godfather of A.J. Brown's daughter. a very long-standing relationship. These guys can afford to go at each other, and we've seen that during the course of time in Philly. Now, is A.J. Brown a little bit of a diva? Is there always something maybe, got to be perfect? I don't necessarily think you're walking on eggshells around him, unlike a couple other wide receivers in the past. But that's what makes him a wide receiver, because he is a diva. Randy Moss, Terrell Owens. I mean, maybe the only great one in the history that we can really point to who wasn't. Two of them, Jerry Rice, Larry Fitzgerald. Everybody else has got a little something going on, right? If you're a wide receiver, you're out in the island, you think you're special, you got to be one-on-one plays, you got to be the man. I want him to have the ball. I want him to ask for the ball. If my wide receiver doesn't want to catch the football, that is a problem. Go play in the defense. So this to me is nothing. I'm actually more happy about it than not. I don't think the locker room is in shambles. Nick Sirianni came out and said this feels more like 2022 than 2023. Of course he's going to say that. So what do you really take from that? To me, it's like, no, we're screwed. But to me, this is a good sign. This is not a bad sign. Maybe that's the take. Everybody's like, you're crazy. I think this is better for the Eagles. You have to stay hungry. You have to stay motivated. If this offense goes to the next level, passing-wise, look out.
Well, you know what it is too, Brad, is like the Jets are already dead. So we can't pile on the Jets for losing. The Cowboys are already dead. So we can't pile on the Cowboys for making one of the most brain-dead plays since, and a former Cowboy that we talked about a couple weeks ago, Leon Lett, pulls it off. And there's just, you look across the league and it's like, well, we already shit all over the Bears and we got the Jets and we got so it's, the 49ers have been the talk of the town for a couple of weeks now, but they won. So we can't pile on them. You got to look around and find something. We are at the dead zone. People, we know who these teams are and where they're trying to go. None of the stuff that's going to come out over the next couple of months outside of injury related news means a damn thing.
Tyson, I think who we can really start question what's going on. How about the Atlanta Falcons, bro? I mean, what's going on with them? And listen, when you're right sometimes. I didn't think you're going to be right on this one. We'll get to it, but I think there's a real quarterback conversation that needs to be had in Atlanta, and this is going to stem back. And I think this is where we're going to spend some time because we're going to be patting ourselves on the back for a couple different angles here. But
let's see. Let's
just
let him
focus
get on the
this
field first before we start patting ourselves on the back.
Well, we were like, it makes no sense to sign and then draft. I mean, we said that from the beginning because now you have this. Instead of it being like, Kirk Cousins going through a rough stretch. It's like, do we need to bench Kirk Cousins? Like, it's like, why did you set yourselves up for this? But we'll get there. I just want to know what are you seeing right now, the Atlanta Falcons, that's making you say, holy smokes, this team's in trouble? Is it just Kirk? It's a little bit of everything.
Well, we'll save the Kirk stuff because I think that might be the meat and potatoes of this whole deal. The defense stinks. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. The Vikings scored 21 points on them in the fourth quarter. Sam Darnold makes himself an extra $7 million annually on his next contract off of this game alone. And he's not the only one that has ripped up the Atlanta Falcons this season. Geno Smith found his groove in the middle of October against them. Bo Nix became like a front runner for Rookie of the Year against this Falcons defense. They lost to the freaking Saints in the middle of November. I mean, this is like over and over and over again. They beat the Eagles early in the season, and it was like, maybe this Atlanta Falcons team is actually going to be as advertised. Since then, they are a 500 football team. They sit here at 6-7 on the year. The strength of schedule hasn't been very good. And Brad, they're winning shootouts. And that's Kirk Cousins' MO, right? I mean, that's what he's done most of his career. He's got a little Tony Romo in him where he scores 40, the other team scores 42, and you look at it and you go, well, he did everything he could. Sometimes you got to circle the guy that's been the common denominator in all of these things. Kirk Cousins hasn't thrown a touchdown pass since, like, the election, basically, is what it feels like right now. I think is it 8 interceptions with no touchdowns over the last couple of weeks?
I think that's what we're at. I'm trying to find it.
And he threw for like 340 yards last week, and Mooney's back involved in the offense, and it's awesome. The only constant, essentially, on this Atlanta Falcons team, unfortunately for them, is Bijan Robinson is really good, and Tyler Algier is a pretty good number 2, and they can set up the run game. They still are maybe a little bit more reliant on the outside zone scheme than you would like to see from a team with like 2 inside dual runners. But that's Raheem Morris. That's what they're going to do, and they're going to get that figured out. You did this to yourselves, Atlanta. You opened the door not only for Tampa Bay to come in and steal this division with, Godwin out. Mike Evans was out for a long time. Baker's been hurt. You did this to yourselves when you gave them $100 million and then you picked a quarterback at 8th in the draft. They can't get sacks. What were we saying before the draft? This defense can't get pressure on anybody that could be playing on air, and the quarterback would still have 3 seconds to throw the football. And that's the case. I mean, what did you expect? That's where I'm at with this team, is like everybody's up in arms about the Atlanta Falcons. And it was like the only people, that should be upset right now is Arthur Blank, because Terry Fontenot and the crew did this.
Yeah, the defense is an issue for sure. And I think, Raheem Morris is brought in to improve this defense. We've always talked about, if you're going from a different scheme, it's hard to just turn things around this first year. So, we'll see what happens. Now, the problem is this division was on platter for Atlanta. So when you kind of take that into account, it's like this isn't like a rebuild. Like Raheem Morris wasn't going to the the Panthers, where it's like this is going to take some time. It was like, no, you have Kirk Cousins. You have an ready-made offense. All you need to do is come in and pick up this defense. Hasn't happened. They're collapsing. They've lost 4 in a row. Tyson mentioned the loss to the Saints. That was a bad loss. Then you get embarrassed at the Broncos. You come back home. You lose to the Chargers in a game you could have won. Lose 17-13. When your defense actually plays well, your offense can't do it. And then you just get boat raced by the Vikings late in a game that you were in for the majority of the contest. Now you got to go to the Raiders. That's a game you have to win. Is anybody confident in that? That's the real question. I mean, we would have looked this on paper. You got a third-string quarterback in there if you're the Raiders. I think the Falcons should win. They should. They should stop the bleeding here. But the way they've been playing, it's tough. And that's what happens when you have a bad defense. It puts pressure on your quarterback and Kirk Cousins to go out and make plays. I'm shocked that it's been this bad from Cousins over these 4 games. I believe you're correct. 8 interceptions. We're not even counting the fumbles that he's had. No touchdowns, something along those lines. He's got to be better. He's a veteran. I saw some of these advanced guys, they've gotten away from play action. That's his strength. Why have they done that? I'm not sure. You would think his Achilles getting stronger at this point, coming off the injury. So there's a lot of question marks in Atlanta, and a lot about what's going to happen going forward, which is where I want to kind of turn this over to this point of the conversation. Is it time to give Michael Penix a look? We've seen teams in the past call in the relievers, for lack of a better term, but that's in a different situation. This is like you're calling in the rookie to get you to the playoffs, to win the division. Do you think that's the right move?
I don't know. Right now, it feels like, just electing a new captain to a sinking ship. And maybe that's not the best idea. One thing I didn't mention there, Brad, and this is like always lost in translation a little bit with the Falcons. They got a bunch of guys that are allergic to the end zone. Drake London didn't score touchdowns in college. Kyle Pitts didn't score touchdowns in college. Bijan Robinson didn't score a ton of touchdowns in college, and now they come in the NFL, and Bijan gets in the end zone every other game, and that's fine. That's what you expect a star running back to do. But like Darnell Mooney is your touchdown. This doesn't make any sense. This is a team that they built, and when you get guys scoring touchdowns is a skill, and they got a bunch of guys who aren't very good at it, and maybe that's on the scouting department or whoever else. Do you turn it over to Michael Penix Jr. now? I don't think so. I think you got to at least ride out the rest of the season. It's a massive financial commitment to abandon right now, but it's bad. And the fact that we're having this conversation about a team that was 6-3 and essentially like a Houston Texans path to winning the division, where it was like you just have to not suck and you're going to be just fine here. They're in danger of missing the playoffs. And if that's the case, then I think Penix, there's going to be a lot of smoke about him starting in about 8 months. Once we get into next August, it's going to be, this is the guy. But everything's also been really buttoned up on the Atlanta Falcons side. We haven't heard a bunch of Michael Penix stuff. Like the stories that you're seeing circulating right now, they're using quotes from August. They're using quotes from July, quotes from April before the draft about how much they like this guy. They're not abandoning Kirk Cousins outwardly, which gives me no real reason to think they're going to do it, here before the end of the year.
Yeah, because I think that's kind of what you have to do, right? I mean, if you're Raheem Morris, you can't just be like, we're turning our back on this guy now. He's a likable guy, right? Like everybody likes Kirk Cousins. I think nobody's rooting for him to fail. Certain guys who are prick, maybe as a quarterback position, you kind of see him fail, and some of the teammates are like, maybe kind of deserve that a little bit. It's just early on Kyler Murray, right? Like when everything was going good, it was like, oh sweet, but it's kind of in the back of your mind, like this guy kind of needs to get humbled a little bit. I don't think that's ever been the case for Cousins. Tyson, I'm looking here. This is the problem, though. $37.5 million needs to be accounted for. That'd be the cap hit in 2025. He's going to be 37 years old. He's going to be 39 by the end of this contract. He's coming off an Achilles tear. This is where it goes back to the question marks we had when it first went down on draft night. Why the hell did you not upgrade your defense? Why the hell did you take Penix? Oh, because we want to do the long play. But the problem is you're not drafting like you're the Packers, like when you have a history of developing quarterbacks when it's a guy in Jordan Love who's a little bit raw. Michael Penix might have been the most experienced guy outside of Bo Nix, or he was in this draft class. Like he was ready to come in and be the Bo Nix of this class for a team. So it just made no sense at the time. And now you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Because what happens if Kirk Cousins, because we both assume he's going to finish out the season. I don't think either of us would turn it over to Penix right now. What happens if Penix beats him out in camp next year? You got an expensive backup, and you're going to have dead cap money if you cut him. I mean, it's going to be a mess.
Yeah, you gotta call Vegas at that point and just hope they didn't take the Sanders brothers or Carson Beck or whoever else. They're between the rock and the hard place. It's almost like when you're picking 8th in the draft, you shouldn't be acting like preordained division champs, let alone a playoff team. The New York Jets did the same thing, and like they catch a bunch of heat for it. This is crazy.
That is true. That's a good point. And if the Raiders pick Carson Beck, we'll get to that when we get in the draft season. They got a lot more problems than trading for Kirk Cousins, I'll tell you that much. But that's interesting, man. I mean, we'll see if the Falcons can get it right. Just to kind of close on this, here is the remainder of their schedule. At Raiders, home Giants, at Commanders, home Panthers. Can they win all of those 4 games?
Should be 3-1.
They can do it, 3-1. That could potentially get them in. So we'll continue to look at the playoff race, all that good stuff as we move forward. But Tyson, let's turn our attention to this weekend.
Marquee matchups.
And folks, I swear we're not trying to make this an Eagles podcast. It's been a lot of Eagles stuff, but we got to get into Steelers-Eagles. I mean, it's a battle of the Commonwealth. It's a battle of 2 really good teams. I mean, I can't believe we're saying this here, but Eagles are 11-2, Steelers 10-3. Steelers 5-2 away from home, Eagles 5-1 at home. So I mean, this is something's got to give here. And it's a defense for the Steelers to be able to compress and get after the back. It's an offensive line for the Eagles that's been a little bit leakier this season than in the past, but they need to step up. Jalen Hurts has got a pocket back there. Steelers have done a better job on the back end, but they're still vulnerable to getting carved up. So I think if you give them protection, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, hey, mark it down. I think they're going to have a big day. But what are you seeing from this matchup? I know you were talking a little bit before we got on here about the Russell Wilson angle, but the Eagles-Steelers angle. So why don't you share that with the audience?
Yeah, Russell Wilson, 5-0 against the Philadelphia Eagles in his career. If you're an Eagles fan, you remember all 5 of those because they suck to watch and they hurt because these are the Russell Wilson games that live on the highlight films. These are the moon balls and all of that stuff. And the Steelers haven't won in Philadelphia since, I believe, 1965 was the last time. And the last time they visited the link, A.J. Brown had 3 touchdowns. Different defense, different teams, different offensive scheme for the Eagles. I don't expect a repeat, of 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. But there is some familiarity there with the way that they played them last time, and the Steelers are going to know that too. It looks to me like George Pickens is probably not going to play on Sunday, which is a massive deal. If you watch the Eagles-Panthers game this past weekend, at the beginning of the game, really for the first 3 quarters and every 3rd and 4th down, there was somebody running around wide open. And that's Adam Thielen made hey, welcome to the NFL, Cooper DeJean. Welcome to the NFL, 𝐷𝐭 I'm a crafty veteran. I know how to get this done. I don't think you're terrified of Calvin Austin. This could be a good game for Pat Freiermuth, and maybe Najee Harris kind of keeps things rolling here for the Steelers offense. But I do think the Eagles just have a little bit more when it comes to talent on the roster. And if Mike Tomlin can overcome that through, being Mike Tomlin, then hats off. I think that Philadelphia is able to get some quick hitter things going and maybe it's impossible to say neutralize TJ Watt, but if there's a tackle combo in the NFL that you feel okay with leaving TJ Watt on an island, it's going to be Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. So the Eagles can kind of attack the Steelers defense maybe a little bit differently than like Cleveland did last week, for example.
Yeah. I mean, without Pickens, this is a huge boost for the Eagles defense. Major loss for the Steelers. He's the one guy that you can say, can you go out and win against Quinyon Mitchell? Can you go out and win on the other side against Slay, against DeJean? Yes. I mean, elite wide receivers can do that. Really good player. You take him out, like you said, scared of Calvin Austin, scared of Van Jefferson, probably not. Freiermuth, I think probably becomes number one. Number two, I think Austin probably still is where Wilson looks on those moon balls, something down the middle. He'll probably look to attack the middle of the field because it seemed like that's where the Carolina Panthers were getting open the majority of the time. I think the Eagles win this game. And I think this one we're kind of galvanized. They're going to be super focused on winning. Steelers are going to come into town off a divisional game. They just beat the Browns. They've always kind of split or had a difficult time with them. This feels like the Eagles kind of rally the troops, circle the wagons. Let's go win one. Let's all get on the same page. Let's celebrate.
Speaking of circling the wagons, Brad, who's next?
Bills, Lions in a banger. People are loving this one. Two great offenses against two great defenses. What's your mind at? Are you watching for anything in particular? Are you rooting for a good game? Like that's kind of obvious, but like what's catching your eye when you're looking at this one?
Well, it's not all that often, that we catch these games of Josh Allen getting to play inside a dome. And so I think that's something that I'm excited about. This is a guy who just had 6 touchdowns. I think he's the first one since like Sonny Jurgensen pre-NFL merger to pull that off. 3 rushing, 3 passing. Absolutely insane game. They go down to the Los Angeles Rams. We talked about them and how they can close seasons really hot. I think the Bills need to find the running game a little bit again. There was a time earlier this season where it was like, James Cook is the guy that they thought he was going to be. Ray Davis is an excellent complementary piece, and Ty Johnson can kind of fit in where you need. That didn't necessarily seem to be the case. Now, game script-wise, kind of got away from them a little bit, and they were able to really just kind of get things going there in that fourth quarter, but the offense was stagnant for most of it. This is also a guy in Joe Brady that might be auditioning for some head coaching roles versus a guy in Ben Johnson that might be auditioning for some coaching roles. Oh, and Aaron Glenn is on the radar for all these teams too. So take a look at the sidelines because you got probably 3 future head coaches in the NFL, even as soon as next season out there. But this is a game that just kind of feels like, the Buffalo Bills are going to score a ton of points, and then you look up at the end and Dan Campbell has his balls out of his pants and the Lions are going for it on 4th and 8, and they win the football game.
It does feel like this. I think it's going to be a fireworks show. Sometimes you get that feeling and it's like, I don't know if there's going to be that many points, or, you think there's going to be a ton of points and there's not that many points, or sometimes you're like, this game's going to suck and it's a shootout. I think the Bills, the problem I have is the Bills they've got to improve what just happened on defense against the Rams. I mean, they got absolutely carved up by Matt Stafford and the passing attack by that offense. It was right. Because that's what concerns me for this one. Bills got to go back on the road, face an offense that can kind of similarly attack you with the speed and route running ability of Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. Do you think it gets fixed in time? That's the question. On the flip side, are the Bills going to be able to get their weapons back? Like the fact they did that without Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman still banged up was impressive. But this Lions defense, I can't believe we're saying this, is one of the top in the league. And compared to what they were, that's why Aaron Glenn's getting all these looks. This is going to be a battle of strength here. I think Josh Allen's going to have to will the team to victory again. I got to dive into this a little more before I give a pick off the top of my head, but I think this is going to be a shootout and a fun one.
I hope so.
Final one here. Sunday Night Football, Packers versus Seahawks. And this is a huge game implication-wise. I mean, Tyson talked about it in the open. The Seahawks found some momentum, especially coming off the bye. The defense did not look good early on under Mike McDonald. And there was kind of some questions there, like, he's supposed to be the guru. It's a new scheme. They're starting to figure it out. And on the flip side, this offense with Ryan Grubb, they figured some things out. Geno Smith, still a little bit inconsistent, but finding things. Zach Charbonnet, welcome to not being on the milk carton anymore. And then the Packers are doing what they do. They just quietly have gotten better and better and better under LaFleur and Jordan Love. This should be an awesome one too. Where's your mind at? What are you watching for in this matchup?
I want to see how Green Bay bounces back. I think that's a game that they really, really needed last Thursday, and a game they probably should have. They kind of outplayed the Detroit Lions for most of that football game, and then Detroit just showed the pedigree of a team that has 1 loss right now on the season. They're really good. This game feels super public to me as far as we don't often talk betting angles on here, but I see this over under at 46 points, and it just feels like everybody in the country is going to hammer this over, and we might get a Sunday night stinker. Green Bay is surprisingly low, I think, to the average person on the like pass attempts per game. Jordan Love isn't necessarily getting the license to sling it the way that you saw the way they closed last season. Jaden Reed disappeared on Thursday night. Christian Watson is like there sometimes when Jordan Love needs him, but these guys got to get going. I mean, Luke Musgrave is an awesome player. That can't be your number one week over week. Josh Jacobs has been killing it. Is Kenneth Walker going to play? And what does that do for the Seattle offense? Because Zach Charbonnet just had his best game as a pro by a factor of 10. He's never looked the way he looked, like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. One of those was a 51-yard chunk. The average looks a lot different if you take that away. But this is a different version of the Seattle Seahawks, and I think that if you haven't been watching over the last couple of weeks, Jackson Smith-Njigba feels like the one, and then DK Metcalf is kind of sliding in there as that secondary target, which if you're a advanced numbers guy, you kind of thought that was going to happen with Jackson Smith-Njigba coming out in the draft, but he's playing awesome, and the Seahawks offense looks awesome. Geno, I think, does enough in this one. This is a tough place to play. Like, the 12s and Seattle and all of this stuff. People don't go in there, especially on primetime, and walk out with a win. This is a tough game for Green Bay, and it's one, we're talking about them. Oh, can they catch the Lions? Can they catch the Vikings for second?
Right. I think we're just kind of assuming, because the Packers are sneakily good. Yeah, the Vikings continue to win. How about this? You said we don't talk betting lines on this show particularly. We do that later in the week. Packers are 3-point favorites on the road. That surprise you?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. When's the times that Seattle's been on national TV so far this season, though? Like, there was the banger game against the Lions where the offense was really good, but they lost. And I'm kind of struggling to remember if there's been a time in between that, since like they feel like two different teams to me. Like the beginning of the season, the Seattle Seahawks were like, oh, that's a 500 football team. This one feels like a team that would win 11 games.
Yeah, 8-5 too. They could do it. You got 4 left, and kind of put a stamp on Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's 99 yards away from going over 1,000. So he's had a really good season, 5 touchdowns. I assume that'll go up a little bit more later in his career. But yeah, I mean, this is a guy that people thought coming out. I'm with you. This is a tough place to play. Seahawks are playing really good right now. If Geno can limit mistakes, we know the Packers have been adept at taking the football away. Geno Smith, not necessarily the best at protecting the ball at certain times. That could be the decider here. So that's something to keep an eye on. And then, yeah, like you said, I mean, on the flip side, got Jordan Love. If you want to talk about Brett Favre, gunslinger, holy smokes, that dude never seen a throw that he didn't want to make. So I'm with you. It's either going to be a stinker or we're going to have another one of those shootouts. I'm not quite sure which way this is going to go.
It better be a shootout, because I'm not looking forward to the 2 Monday night games that Roger forced down our throats.
We got to get one of these to go off. And Tyson, we're getting to the point here. We got a banger Thursday night game, and we don't really do anything before Thursday. We do a Friday show, but I think that's gonna be a good one. And we've been kind of getting hot in this Discord. Why don't you tell them where they can find all our stuff?
Yeah, it's the Discord app, like Brad mentioned. The group name is I Said What I Said. Link is in the bio. Go ahead, click it. Takes you right there. We'll let you right in. Tons of different channels in there. If you're playing a Thursday night same game parlay, if you have a 15-legger, this weekend that you want us to get in on or just want us to see, go ahead and throw it in the chat. Let us know what you're playing. Fade us, tail us. It doesn't matter. It's a good time. Brad, we've got like some borderline professionals in there. Some of these numbers are getting a bit ridiculous. It's super cool.
Like, subscribe, and share the show. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button on the way out. If you're listening to the podcast form, give us a rating. If you haven't already, Tyson and I were going through the numbers. We're like, whoa, where'd these ratings come from? So we appreciate it if you're listening to the podcast and haven't done it yet. Stay subscribed. We've been a little bit spotty here with the holidays and with me traveling, but we'll be in the chair and we'll be recording this. Is really NFL center stage. We got bowl games, so we'll be telling you kind of that calendar, which is tough to follow sometimes. That's why you got to subscribe so you don't miss a single thing that we put out. And share it with a friend, share it with an enemy, whatever you like to do. Just helps us out. We do appreciate your support. With that said, we got some good content coming out. How about Bill Belichick, our old NFL buddy, getting hired by North Carolina? We'll break that down, and we're going to talk a little early college football playoff preview. So go check that out. We'll talk to you guys then. Peace.